Welcome to today's episode of
Spectre,
Spectre
Spiel,
Spiel. Two girls.
and scary stories.
My name is Ria,
My name is Ashita.
and today we are going to share Chinese urban legend stories.
Okay.
Though they are not that scary, but it will give you chills. I found these stories from Reddit, and I would like to apologize beforehand if I butcher the pronunciation. So let's get on with today's episode.
Zoom!
So, our first story is Beijing bus number 375. The This bus goes through Old Summer Palace, Peking University, Tsinghua University in Beijing. In the 1990s, this area was still a suburb of Beijing, and after 8 o'clock every night, there were very few pedestrians on the streets. One day in November 1995, an old lady boarded the last bus of Beijing number 375 bus. The old lady looked at the carriage that is inside the bus and found that there were only the conductor, the driver, and another young male passenger. She sat down in the empty seat and the bus drove on. Two more stops later, three new passengers boarded the bus, dressed in Qing dynasty ensembles, with long braids and faces coated with unnatural white powder. All the people on the bus were startled, but soon regained their composure. This was because costume dramas had just become popular on the Chinese mainland. They thought the three were extras who had just got off work and didn't have time to take their costumes off. After a while, the old lady suddenly stood up and she started shouting. She was like, "There is a thief on the bus. My wallet was stolen." She was shouting like that. She asked the driver to stop and noisily asked to get out of the bus and call the police. She identified the young male passenger she had seen while boarding the bus, who was already on the bus when she got, and she was like, "He's the thief, he's the thief." And she dragged him off the bus too, along with her. So the young man had no choice but to follow the old lady out of the bus so as not to delay the bus. After the bus left, he was about to quarrel with the old lady, but the old lady spoke first. And she said, "Young man, I just saved your life, but I could only save your life." And then she added, "The three passengers who looked like people in the Qing dynasty were not humans, but ghosts. When they came up, I saw that they had no legs under their clothes." The next day, the bus was found on its way to the terminal and fell into the ditch beside the road. The driver and conductor on the bus were dead, their heads turned in an abnormal direction, and the bodies were severely decomposed overnight. No one ever saw the three men in Qing dynasty clothes again. And there are actually several versions of the story, and in some of them, the number of the bus is 337 because it is closer to some of the details mentioned in the story. And according to a study by Chinese netizens in 2019, the specific text of the story may have been written by Zhang Zhen, a famous horror novelist in China, and its prototype is the Last Midnight Bus that exists all over the world. So, Ashita, what do you think about the story?
So, as you said, the bus number 375,
Hmm.
I think it's like three ghosts, the
Okay.
seven passengers,
Total.
total seven number of people
Okay.
in the bus,
Okay.
and then five of excluding the old lady and the young man.
Oh, that may be possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So, our next story is Old Lady with Cat Face. So, there is a taboo in ancient Chinese folk customs, which is don't let cats near corpses, especially black cats. So, once a black cat crosses a human corpse or coffin, the dead will be resurrected as zombies.
Okay.
The rumor has it that in 1995, a family quarreled in a small mountain village in northern Heilongjiang, China. The son and his wife quarreled with their mother over a trivial matter and even turned into a fight. So that was that big fight. The old woman felt that she was not respected and was very angry and desperate. That night, she hung herself. She committed suicide. The body of the old woman was so ferocious that her tongue stuck out and her mouth and her eyes were open with an enraged expression. According to local customs, for such people who die of abhorrence, the closest relatives must appease them by being on their side all night before being buried. But the old woman's son and wife fell asleep while accompanying the old woman's body, and the black cat stepped over the old woman's body. The cat died, and the old woman came back to life in the form of a cat faced zombie. It angrily killed its son and daughter in law and then fled from the village. It is rumored that the cat faced old lady hunts children who go out alone at night and then eat them. The belly of the dead body, which is found, is filled with dead rats. And then this urban legend of cat-faced old lady can be traced back to 1924 when the old woman's body was destroyed by a black cat after her death. She became a zombie and took revenge on her unfilial children angrily. And after passing on for generations, the story evolved into a Helongian version. At that time, some schools in Harbin even warned their students to pay attention to safety. But some Chinese netizens say that the story is popular in northeast China because many criminals abducted and trafficked children in the area at that time. They murdered children and stole their organs. So, our next story is Zombie Rush in Chengdu. In 1995, Chinese archaeological teams excavated three ancient bodies near Wuho Temple in Chengdu. And due to the lack of tight security at the site, when the archaeological team returned to the archaeological site the next day, the three ancient bodies had disappeared. They thought the bodies had been stolen by tomb robbers, but a few days later, five mummies were found at another place in Chengdu. These five mummies included the three bodies that were found previously. Then something terrible happened. The five corpses came back from the dead into zombies and they bit the living with sharp teeth. Some people died immediately after being bitten, while others slowly lost themselves and became similar walking corpses. It is rumored that China had used the army and used flamethrowers to suppress everything before the zombies formed a tide. And it is also said that the story consists of several versions and mainly the source of the patient zero. The one that is most widely circulated is that, according to current research by Chinese netizens, the truth of the story may be a tragedy caused by rabies. A farmer in rural Chengdu was infected with rabies. He gradually went crazy and then bit his own pig. He and the pig soon died, Later, due to the lack of medical knowledge, the farmer's family turned the dead pig's meat into food, and a few days later, the whole family was infected with rabies and bit the denizens of the same village. Enough of zombie stories. The next story is vampires in Shanghai.
Thank God, I was about to say, is are all the stories about zombies?
Today. Yeah. No. So, this is during the year 1995. So, in the latter half of the year 1995, a laboratory accident occurred in a biology research institute on the outskirts of Shanghai. A researcher mistakenly ate a germ that infected him with a terrible disease. He had to drink the blood of mammals to survive. The researcher, surnamed Ling, was a top biologist who studied in Germany and received his doctorate. He had such a high reputation in the institute that he used his power to cover up the laboratory accident. At first, he lived on the human blood used for research in the laboratory, but the stock soon ran out. He didn't want to kill anyone, so he began to drink rat blood. But the blood of the rat could not fill his appetite, and he began to fall into the turmoil of hunger. He began to attack other people, but still kept some sense, so he chose to attack women walking alone on the street at night, like vampires in countless novels. He successfully committed several crimes which attracted the attention of the local police. When he last appeared in Hongkou Park to attack a woman, long ambushed police tried to arrest him, but in the process, two policemen were killed. In the end, he was killed by a sniper. When the police researched his diary afterwards, they found that he had recorded the process of his illness, and the second half of the diary became crazy and disturbing. The language of the diary had gradually changed from Chinese to Hebrew.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the origin of this urban legend is still a mystery, but there is a saying that the story is a recreation of zombie rush in Chengdu by the Shanghai people. So, our last story is about human flesh stuffed buns. In 1982, China had just reformed and opened up, and its economy was still very weak. At the time, the average Chinese could not eat meat every day because the price of the meat was too expensive. But in Shidan, a well known commercial street in Beijing, there was a steamed stuffed bun shop whose steamed buns were stuffed with meat, but the price was very cheap. Because the taste was good and the price was cheap, the business of the shop became prosperous. The shop sometimes sold 3 or 400 meat buns a day, and it was only in 1993 that China had abolished the grain and meat distribution system and allowed to be traded through the market. So it was a mystery where the steamed stuffed bun shop got so much cheap meat to make steamed buns in 1982. So this was like uh, more than 10 years ago. The business of the shop was so good that the shopkeeper began to hire people from other places in Beijing as employees. In the early days of reform and opening up, many Chinese went out of their hometown for the first time to try to make money in economically developed areas. Before Shenzhen became a special economic zone, Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou were the best choices. So at that time, communications were underdeveloped, and it took a long time for many people who went to work in other cities to write a letter or go home once. Some people died accidentally in other cities, and only a few years later, the relatives would be notified in their hometown. Yeah. As you may think, the outsiders who worked in this steamed stuffed bun shop were killed and made into meat stuffings and put into steamed buns. This is why the steamed stuffed bun shop was always able to sell low cost steamed buns. So the owner recruited outsiders to work, and near the next payday, the manager would kill them and sell them as steamed buns. Local customers and police began to be confused because they never saw any clerk working in the steamed stuff bun shop for more than a month. Some customers even complained that uh, they were getting people's fingernails in steamed buns.
Ew.
The boss would say that when making meat stuffing, the shop assistant accidentally cut his fingernails in. I already fired him.
Yeah.
So convenient, right?
Yeah.
And when the police went to investigate the store, they found half used bodies in the freezer. The shopkeeper who was arrested said that at first he only mistakenly killed a man who criticized the bad taste of the steamed buns and turned human flesh into steamed buns to hide the body. But unexpectedly, the first batch of human meat steamed buns sold more than ordinary steamed buns, so he began to turn human meat steamed buns into a fixed menu. And according to some people, this urban legend is based to some extent on a real and cruel case. In 1982, a cook in Beijing killed two outsiders who came to work in Beijing because of a quarrel. He made the bodies of the two men into meat sauce and gave them to his neighbors. His neighbor discovered the abnormality of the meat sauce almost immediately and called the police. The killer was arrested that day, and no one ate human flesh in this real case, and the killer was controlled almost immediately. But in that era of underdeveloped media, the story about this case spread widely among the people and eventually became the version of human meat steamed buns. At that time, many Beijingers stopped eating steamed buns because of this urban legend. So, Ashita, if someone made you eat a sauce made of human meat and you realize it later on, what would you do?
I'd puke immediately.
I guess you and I'll do the same thing. I'll be disgusted.
Yeah.
So, Ashita, how did you like today's story? How was it?
It was so so okay. Okay.
Like, not that scary.
Not that scary.
Yeah, I had actually told during the introduction that it will not be that scary, but it will definitely give you chills.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope you all enjoyed today's episode and the stories gave you the chills.
And we hope to bring another episode soon.
Till then, goodbye.